Hi there. I know at this point and at this juncture, some of you might have questions running in your heads. Like, why did Faith start the Healing Nest? Who is Faith? What experience does she have with pain that she's here speaking about healing? Well, I did promise you guys, so today I'll be telling you my own very experience with mental illness, which is really what birthed the Healing Nest. So, welcome to the Healing Nest. So, story time. Let's start with how it all began, like the genesis, right? So, for me, this experience really very much started right after graduating uni, right? Would I say there were pointers to this? What even did I suffer from, and what did I recover from, or I'm recovering from? So clinically, it was diagnosed that I had a mild case of bipolar disorder. I didn't know that there were stages. Before, I would think that when you're bipolar, but apparently there are stages. So that's what I got diagnosed with in the year 2023. That's shortly after graduating uni. And just like any other student, about to wrap up uni, that wouldn't have been like in my cards of many possibilities. I was just thinking about how I'll finish school, serve, get a job, leave. But then, I was in for a great shock because right after graduation, that's the month of May, I came back home. And I think June, July, that's when this all happened. But then the thing that helped me greatly, I would say, is how my family responded to the thing. Because when you're experiencing something that is foreign, something that not any of you are familiar with, it can be very, very scary and overwhelming. Because then if you were to be the person to experience it, the first thing that will come to your head is like, okay, this person is crazy. Because literally that's what it was. Because I was going through such a confusing state that I didn't even understand, or I couldn't comprehend what I was going through, what was happening to me. At 1 minute, I'm like in control of my mind. In the other, it's like I'm just taking a seat in the back of my head and watching everything just play out. But yes, at some point, I would like to say that I did know what mental illness was about. I had a friend. She loves educating me about random facts, by the way. So she did tell me a bit about mental illness, and I think she told me how she was suffering from ADHD and started pointing, I started being educated about that. But even then, there's some things when you do not experience yourself or haven't experienced yourself, you will not be able to understand it or not take it to be a serious thing. Because I'm like, especially when you hear the symptoms, they sound like very mild things. Like, are you sure you're not saying that to just, it sounds woke, it sounds aesthetic, it sounds, new age, Gen Z vibes, and that's how ignorant of me. Because like I said, I was in for a shock of my life. Because here I was, a girl who didn't think anything to mental illness, actually plunging deep into it because of it manifesting, right? But for me, it tagged itself around the things I was most passionate about, and that's why there was no clear starting to it, because it came up around religion, around my faith. It was looking like, okay, faith is just becoming serious with her relationship with God. Finally I was being more active at home. I was doing the things I needed to do. In fact, if anything, I became very responsible. But the thing is, I became very, very hyper. Now, as I'm saying this story, right, I want you to be reflecting, because these things, as I'm saying, are things that you could miss. A loved one might be going through it and you wouldn't even know. But of course, there are different symptoms to different things, and that's why there's good for a need for it's good for you to go and get diagnosed to know, okay, this is what is wrong. Not to tag you as ill or to label you as ill, or so as to get the right treatment to help you, because truly that's what helped me. Because after discovering that, oh, okay, Faith, this is what you're going through, and at first it was they hid it from me. I wasn't told that this was what was wrong, because all of a sudden I would get so angry, I would get so crazy, I would literally, it was too explosive. Sometimes I would fight with my family, and all of a sudden I would grow weak, I would start crying, I would get very happy. So it was just too much of one thing. There was no stability. I've lost a sense of stability. I wasn't sleeping, I wasn't eating. Like I said, it came up around religious activities, because at that time I was trying to fast for 21 days when it happened. But I thought I was just fasting. It didn't click that I wasn't sleeping, because in as much as I was laying down, my eyes closed, my mind was very active. So literally my eyelids would just be closed, but I was wide awake. And that went on for days. So I wasn't sleeping. I was always scared of nothing and everything. The darkness was scary, everything. And then everything was I was too paranoid. I could see my loved ones and be thinking they're my enemies out to get me, in as much as I loved them. So it was a lot, right? And that's when we got assistance. Like I said, my family's response was just beautiful. In as much as it was chaotic for everybody, I wasn't tied down like a mad person. I wasn't made to even feel crazy. If anything, it was just a thing of, okay, we're trying to understand this alongside you. And they were really even indulging me, listening to my stories, where I'd be saying things that now, if I think about, is very crazy, because we didn't lose our dad. And I think I remember the story where I was telling my big sister how if we did certain things, he would come back to life. But that's also really because I didn't allow myself mourn my dad properly. So there was that delusion of him not being really dead. Even outside of the delusions, I have always had it was a coping mechanism for me to chest the pain of losing a parent. So sometimes these things can come as a result of that, losing a loved one or heartbreak, because also around that period of time I got like the worst heartbreak ever for me personally. So it was a lot, because this person was the person I was confiding about everything, my human diary. So to get that ripped, it was just too much for me. And so I took everything now, like, okay, dumping it on God, trying to be like, okay, let's do this God thing. But the thing is, even when you're about to see it, right, this life is more spiritual than it is physical. So I'd recommend and advise that when you're approaching spiritual things, practices, please do it with guidance, especially when you don't know what you're doing. Be careful, because for me, that's what happened. And then boom, Faith is now suffering from bipolar. So thanks to my family, I started seeing doctors whom at that point I didn't even know were psychiatrists. And they'd be asking me questions, and I'll just be very audacious with my answers and reply until I realized that, okay, these people are actually experts in this field. So meaning there's something wrong with me mentally. And I had to adapt also through therapy too. I started adapting to the fact that, okay, Faith, maybe there are things that you're being delusional about. Maybe they're not like that. Maybe it is time to let some things go. And truly, through that therapy, right, I allowed myself relieve certain traumas from childhood into adulthood. I used that therapy period to mentally offload those things so that it would help me. I spoke in like details with the therapist, and he was very helpful, gave me exercises and even movies to help me, like, okay, I know you're saying, okay, this thing is a very spiritual thing. Yes, it is, but please see it as this too. So he gave me 2 movies, one which was very spiritual based, and then the other was about another case of a mental illness, because the man was very delusional. And I watched it too, and that really helped me in letting go of some things. Now, it was at that point that I actually started becoming myself again.